So, hi, Alyson. Welcome to the
Well,
podcast.
thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
um, I was going to introduce you with your full name, but I keep forgetting to ask people to phonetically put it in their bio so I
Okay.
know how to pronounce it. And so I do not want to butcher it. So, how do you say your full name?
My full name is Alyson Spungin.
Oh, I would have got it wrong. I would have done a hard G. So, I'm glad I
Yeah.
asked. But a spongin, what a cool name.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so like things you soak it up like a sponge. I don't know. Marketing, right? I like, how do you work this into the work that you
I
do?
I love the way you think.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm right there with you.
Yep. So Alyson comes my way from a previous guest, which is really exciting, Gina Jacobson, and she is the woman that we've been doing the wealth series with. And we were just having a conversation about what are the things that either in private groups women talk about and talk about a lot, but maybe externally, the conversations that are being brought to us aren't healthy, aren't productive, or aren't fully authentic to what we need. And she then said, "You gotta meet my friend Alyson." And at first I was skeptical, which I did tell you,
Yes, you did. You're very
because I'm
vocal
very
about that.
skeptical of all fitness. I'm gonna use the word guru, even though that's not what I would call you, but people that are in this fitness space, I tend to be very skeptical of because of the pressures that it puts on people. So let's first just tell people what you do or what you say that you do.
Great. So I am a business owner. I am a strength and nutrition coach. I'm going on 11 years in the fitness industry, which is great. When I started, I thought it was probably going to be maybe one until I figured out what my real job was going to be after college. And then 11 years later, I'm still here because I truly love it. I work with primarily with women, with female identifying folks. And my major mission with these people is to learn how to take up space within their fitness journey, to ditch this thinness obsession, this small, this shrink, and get big. Not only, build muscle and be strong, but like present big, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mm.
that's the take up space portion of what I do. And then, like I said, I'm also a nutrition coach. And my big tagline there with that is nutrition without restriction.
Okay.
And the main goal, learning how to fuel your body properly to take over the world.
I love the take over the world. Very Ren and Stimpy of you. Wait, no, I said that so wrong. It's Pinky in the Brain. Oh,
Thank
I
you.
just disappointed my 90s inner child.
It's okay. I won't tell anybody. Or
And for the people that are young listening, they're like, "Girl, nobody cares."
right.
Okay, so I wanna back up a little bit because I have so many things about all the things you just said and how they're labeled, but I wanna kinda ease into it a little bit.
Great.
So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Connecticut.
Oh,
Yep. I'm an
I've
East Coast.
always been curious about Connecticut.
Connecticut's a really interesting place because there are certain parts of the state that are one way, and there are certain parts of the state that are very extreme another way. I think you could probably say that about a lot of places.
Sure.
But from after leaving Connecticut, a lot of people are like, oh, they think of like areas that are very wealthy.
Waspy?
Yeah, very well off, very waspy. That is the opposite of how I grew up.
Okay.
So I grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut, so right near Hartford. Hartford is definitely not waspy. And a big reason why I think, like I said, I'm surprised I'm still in this industry because it's such a hustle. But I was born with this hustle was in me, just growing up very financially insecure. So I grew up in Connecticut pretty poor, which was different than a lot of the folks around me, right? So this whole still present big, all of that stuff, I think that started as early as that time period,
Of
right? So
course.
yeah, that's where
Of
I grew
course.
up and kind of how I grew up.
And, I always wanna remind people because I never remember if I tell them this in the pre-interview or not. If there's ever a point where I ask something and you're like, "Girl, slow your roll," tell me,
For
okay?
sure. Yeah.
Okay, so did you grow up in a traditional secular home, mom, dad, whole 9?
No. So I grew up in I've actually never lived in a house I've only ever lived in an apartment or a, multiple family
Yeah.
unit. I when I was, when I had 2 older siblings, they're 8 and 6 years older than me.
Oh,
So,
wow.
they're a big part of and they're both they're my sisters, so they're
Yeah.
both a big part of my, brand power too, growing up with a very strong feminine, presence, right? So yeah, we grew up pretty non-traditional. My dad is he's now has been sober for almost over 30 years, but was an alcoholic,
That's
and we grew up, in a very chaotic environment between my parents. They
okay.
eventually got divorced, and so I grew up mostly living with my mom, and then in my teenage years, I actually found an apartment near my dance studio because dance was my huge outlet. This is where it all started, right? Dance was huge for me. I could go not think about these things, escape the chaos, and be creative, but also be in my body and.
Who did one of your parents choose dance for you, or did you choose dance for yourself?
So my mom danced growing up. She was a cheerleader, she
Mm,
danced, and she loves to dance.
mm.
My 2 other sisters, they're not so much, like, you'd never that's not something either of them had any interest in, and then she saw how I was and respond to, like, music they put on in the house whenever. I learned how to moonwalk when I was 5 years old, we have some home videos of that, and I loved it, so she was very encouraging, getting me in there. So, yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I'm always curious about this in my own health journey.
Right.
Would you say, other than the fact that you were outside of the home taking dance classes, would you consider your home or homes to be places in which movement was encouraged?
Yes.
Okay. What about health? Like healthy lifestyle?
Definitely.
Okay.
And
More from your mom because your dad had issues?
well, more from my mom just because that was kind of like her outlet. So
Okay.
going to the gym, she was really into like the, 80s aerobics era, early
Yep.
90s. That was her thing that she did. And with that, started getting really into the nutrition piece of that. So that was always, even though we were financially insecure, my mom always figured out a way to, to get fruits and vegetables and things in that were, nutrient dense in the house. And that's
Okay.
something always, now coaching other folks on how to do it in a financially, sustainable way. I
Yeah.
learned a lot about that from her,
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
so she
awesome.
definitely encouraged movement, encouraged healthy lifestyle, and my dad is actually a chef.
Oh, wow.
But what's funny is when he would get home, he like, "I just want a bowl of
Yeah,
cereal."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? So he wasn't really chefing up
Yeah.
that much, unless it was more of like a special occasion type of thing, but my mom did the majority of the cooking and the
So my parents, divorced when I was pretty young, but, most of my growing up years, he was I don't know if I would call him a chef because I don't know what the distinction is, but he was a cook. So he worked at a lot of, like, diner and breakfast places, a few Mexican restaurants, things like that.
yeah.
But what is funny is even today, I don't identify him as that because he wasn't I mean, I didn't grow up with him in that way, so I don't know how often he cooked, if I'm really being honest. I don't recall it being a lot,
Right.
but there were, like, special things. Like, I remember he would make cinnamon rolls for, like, our teachers, maybe not our teachers, I don't know who he would make them for, or, like, breakfast was his thing, or when I was a teenager and, like, I don't know how old I was, but I wanted to impress a guy. My dad taught me how to make chicken cordon bleu,
Oh, wow.
which is such a random thing to make for a teenager, like
Yeah.
and by the way, I hated it. I thought it was the grossest thing ever.
Yeah.
It wasn't my jam, but, yeah, so I relate to that, whereas my mom has some things that she puts her foot in,
Mm.
but she's not a great cook overall.
Yeah.
And she would admit that. She would totally admit that. And
Good.
so in our household, well, so I also grew up without a lot of money and yet we were on a what would you call this like line. Like, I had on one side of my family had wealthy grandparents,
Mhm.
even though we were on government assistance.
Sure.
Uh, on the other side of the family, my grandparents, they had a financially stable life, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
but they lived in a really nice trailer home, which is not typically equated with financial stability.
Sure.
But they owned it. They owned a second one for my great-grandmother, and so, like, they worked in the hospital and the public school system. Like, they were blue-collar workers.
Sure.
So we ate Spam, right? And not like Spam, rice, and eggs. We were like fried Spam on Wonder Bread. There was a lot of if uh, Kool-Aid. There was a lot like, a healthy diet was not part of our growing up. Um And so I love hearing when people go into an industry like this or in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they become very health conscious. I always like to know like what percentage kind of were encouraged through childhood one way or another, maybe not fully extreme, but to move or to eat right.
Yeah.
Um because that wasn't the experience that I had, and so I always feel like it makes it harder. I'm not blaming my childhood or my parents, they did the best that they could with what they had and all of those things. It's not
Right.
what I mean, but right? Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard to start liking broccoli if all your life you ate Spam. It's a different flavor profile, right?
Totally. I think it was kinda like my mom, again, like, she was very much a health advocate. Not the best set of genetics going on, especially on my dad's side, so I think
Sure.
that kind of always fueled her, right?
Sure.
Because we didn't have a ton of options, it was like, "This is what's on the table,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and that's what you're eating," you
I
know?
also think that's very I have no idea how old you are, but very generational, right? Like,
I'm about to be 36 in 2 weeks.
okay. Happy birthday. I'm about to be 49 in a few days.
Okay,
Look at
Aries,
us, little
sweetie.
Aries.
Oh.
Um, so a little bit of a difference in age. In my generation, it's the clean plate club,
Yeah.
right? 100%. To the point where my family will probably roll their eyes if they listen. I don't actually think they listen, but if they did, I don't have a lot of childhood memories before the age of 12, but one of the memories that I have that is so ingrained in my soul that I'm almost bitter about it is being around 4th grade-ish, don't quote that day, and it's Halloween, and we're ready, and my dad, the chef or cook, made split pea soup with ham, which to me is the most disgusting proposition anyone could put in front of me. I would rather have liver and onions. Like, gross. And I'm a little hard-headed, so I've been told at that age, and I won't eat it. And I will tell you that that battle of wits lasted days.
Wow.
I sat at that table for at least 3 days, it may have been longer,
Wow.
only being allowed to get up to use the restroom and sleep at night. I missed Halloween, I missed trick-or-treating. Girl, I will tell you, I have not eaten a pea since.
I bet you haven't. That's
I
traumatizing.
take them out of fried rice,
Oh my
like,
god.
I move them. And it's not actually, that's not true. I eat peas at one place in the whole world, and it's because the first time I did, I didn't see them. And it's a little tiny salad at the Oregon coast at a dive bar called Shuckers, and they put fresh peas on their salad, and for whatever reason, that was my Everest, and I conquered it and I ate it, but still in anything else, like if it's cooked or something, I'll put it aside, and it's tormented me.
Oh my
And it's
god.
such a we tease about it in family folklore, but
Yeah.
girl, do not force kids to eat food, like, it just if they're like me, they just dig their heels in more, right? Like,
Right.
"No, thank you, not gonna do it, I will starve." So, food for me has always been a little interesting and challenging. I love food. Um, I don't think I knew I loved food until my late 20s when I started traveling,
Mm.
and now my mom and my baby book suggests that I've always been a fan of food, right? And I was a big eater. But when I started to travel and it was always for work, food was the way I thought, I don't have a lot of time in these countries. I can explore it through food that's being paid for me
It's an experience.
and experience a country. So as soon as I started traveling, I told myself I would eat whatever was given to me. I would try it and just see.
Yeah.
And so I became very exploratory in food, and food became part of my identity in my 20s and 30s, 100%. Like,
Hmm.
I was the girl who would eat the weirdest thing on the menu. I'd go to trade shows, and men that we would be at dinner wouldn't believe I would eat something, and they would bet me money I wouldn't eat something, and I would get hundreds of dollars. Like, I'd
Wow.
be in Vegas, and I'd eat off the tomahawk, and I have pictures of it, and they gave me $100. I went, put it on a roulette wheel, and won 300.
Whoa.
Yeah, like, food just become part of how people knew me. People
Yeah.
wanted to eat with me, go out with me, that type of a thing. And then as you age and that food does something different to you,
Yep.
I started to struggle with what that looked like, and so diet culture became part of my life, and feeling one way or another because at that time I lived in California, Southern California. Size is a big deal.
Sure.
So, and I say all of that because I think that's probably common. I
Yes.
think people probably have a love-hate relationship with food.
I mean, the relationship, the it is a vast, there are lots of different varieties of relationships you can have, but with food. But as you were talking about the pea experience, right? And then going into this whole traveling and tomahawk and all that
Yep.
stuff, you identify so much with this thing
Yeah.
that is like nourishment. And, a lot of some folks who are on the other end of the spectrum just look at it as like, that's fuel, period.
Yes, but I almost like Anderson Cooper is like that, right? I this is years ago, so I might be quoting it wrong, but I feel like in an interview he said, "If you could just inject me with food, I'd be fine." Like, he was like, "I eat smoothies, I don't care about food, it doesn't bring me joy, it's
Right.
just I need it to live." I I can't decide if that's easier or not.
It might be for somebody with it seems like type A personality like Anderson Cooper, right? I have some folks all across the board. I'll give you an example, like folks who struggle with ADHD in their relationship with food. It's very challenging,
Mhm.
and I've seen that in a lot of adults. Oh my gosh, a lot of kids.
Yeah,
So for those folks, would it be easier just to
yeah.
like, okay, can't really get tick that box. The executive function doesn't have to function that way. I'm just going to
Yep.
take this pill,
'Cause it's the all or nothing concept, right?
Yes.
Like, if I'm on a program, I am on a program, and everybody knows about it, and I am. I don't cheat, I don't go, but once I fall once, I'm off the rails, and I'm 100% into not doing it,
Right.
and there's no middle ground. Now, that didn't exist before maybe 30-ish. Like, when it became, uh when the food started to show up in my body. Because before then, I didn't really struggle with weight. I was always very thin. I never looked thin, but I was always very thin. I mean, now I look back and I'm like, girl, you were thin. But like, I've always been a little bit heavier on the bottom. I've had boobs for a really long time. And so that just looks different than how we think of weight culture or thinness culture, right?
Sure.
Um,
So with the hormonal fluctuations that come for a lot of women starting as early as 30,
yeah.
there are some shifts that be shifting,
Yes.
right? And then you're kind of like, who is this?
Yes.
What is going on?
Yes.
And now I can no longer, it sounded like food was almost like an outlet,
Yes.
right? And now that thing,
It was
that,
my vice for sure, but I didn't know it.
mm,
Like, I enjoyed it so much that it didn't seem like a vice, but it was how I, um, self-soothed
mhm,
for sure, for sure, for sure. It was how I celebrated.
mhm.
It was what I did on a bad day. I treated myself to food, and food was always the price. And it wasn't because now I had a little money. Not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but in my life, I had a lot of money. So
Right.
now it was also like, I'm not eating Taco Bell as a reward, right? I'm going to still my favorite Mexican restaurant, Javier's in Southern California, and I'm getting the margarita and the da 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 and the da, and it's an experience.
You're almost kind of flexing
Yes.
your financial stability, you're
Yes.
like, "Bad bitchery, I'm gonna go,"
Yes. I
right?
can't afford a Louis Vuitton, but I can get this
But I can
$14 margarita.
go to Javier's, don't play with me,
Yeah.
right? Like, that makes a ton of sense.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
So as you grow up and dance kind of becomes this thing for you, right? So movement becomes this thing for you. And you go to college and you study psychology. Is the idea of dance a career? Like, do you think you're gonna have a career in this kind of movement?
So if we back up just a little bit, because this part's kind of important, right
Yeah.
before college, when I was in, high school, right? So about 17, I'd say was really the prime year here. So then I had said I had moved in with my dad. Lots of strife between my mom and I, moved in with my dad. I found an apartment across the street from my dance studio, right? I'm like, how can I just, and then became a little obsessed with that movement.
Mhm.
So I felt so good. I took
'Cause
it.
it was your safe place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then also growing up, with the food scarcity, I had a
Yes.
tendency as a younger kid to overeat, right? I might not be able to have this thing anymore. What if, my mom doesn't get
Yeah.
paid or something happens and somebody oh my gosh, we have this thing in the house that we never have. So I'd have to eat all of it.
Yeah.
Definitely an overweight. My doctor described me as husky.
Yeah.
So I right. Jesus. So I was
I'm so happy they don't really use that term anymore because it was so big back then.
right, so I was husky. So being a husky dancer, not really like the vibe in a leotard and pink tights, right?
Yeah.
So how do I make myself less husky? Here comes Atkins. Here comes all this is like,
Are you tall? Sorry to interrupt you, but are you
oh
also tall?
girl,
Okay.
I'm vertically challenged. I am
Okay. Okay.
5'1".
So husky on a 5'1" is so different than husky on 5'5", 5'7",
Correct.
5'9". Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So then all these diets start to come out like big time around this time,
Yeah.
right? So then I become, oh, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that. And then get very into that.
Did
So
you feel I don't know any other word to use from this, but because that was a comment you heard, you take it in, you digest it. Did you feel ugly?
oh yes.
Okay.
And then fat is not a feeling.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the doctor that made those type of comments,
Yeah.
right? And then I will also say being overweight runs in my family on my dad's side, and my mom is very tiny, lean
Okay.
person, always has been, right? So then there's this comparison. Why can't I look like my mom? Why can't I be like my mom? So there's a lot of different stuff going on here,
Yeah.
which developed into an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And I was eventually hospitalized for this,
Mhm.
almost took my life. And it was right before college, so it was like working with a whole team, a doctor, a nutritionist, a dietitian. I had to see these people once a week, right?
Do you think sorry to interrupt, but
No.
before 17, would you have considered yourself confident?
Yes.
Okay.
I always had a crew.
Okay.
Always had a crew, very popular, always had a ton of friends. And then I feel like once people's bodies started changing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then, like, certain girlies are looking a certain way, and I'm not. Then also, I think all the trauma, as I
Yeah.
learned through therapy from my childhood,
Yeah.
I then could control the way that I looked when I couldn't control a damn thing between my crazy ass parents, right?
Your safety was in a community of movement that has these standards with
Yes,
relation to size and weight and all of that. And the people you trust in that community are saying, look, if you want to continue here, here are the things you have to do. You start to doubt your own confidence and beliefs and put it in these people that supposedly have authority.
absolutely. Hip hop dance was my big thing,
Okay.
right? So I wasn't like that classical. I
Yeah.
liked hip hop. I liked lyrical, which is a little bit of like a modern
Yeah.
jazz combination, right? But then because of my financial situation, the owner of my dance studio said, "We will give you a scholarship. You can take all your classes for free here." But she wanted me to get classically trained.
Mm.
And in high school is when I first started taking ballet and things like that.
Ah.
Had a ballet teacher come up to me while I'm on the bar, put her hand under my butt like this and say, "What is that?"
Ah.
And that started at this developmental age of
Yeah.
like, right, everyone's body's transitioning, then fueling into this like obsession. I'm trying to control something. At the time, didn't know that though. At the time, I just was so focused on my body. This is why therapy is a big thing that I preach. It's,
Yes.
like, yes, go to the gym and get strong. Yes, eat the things, but you need to go. Everybody needs to go to therapy. So,
Well, and it's also from a I'm gonna gender this, which I know people hate when I do that, but also as women, there is something about that, right? That touch on the bottom of your butt, whatever, right?
right,
The the ownership that other people have in how they physically react to our bodies as young girls, but also how they verbally express that disgust, disinterest, interest, joy, whatever that is.
right.
It I can see where controlling that becomes attractive.
Absolutely. I mean, it was everything to me
Yeah.
at that point. I ended up telling the owner of the studio, who is somebody very dear to my heart, and she fired her ass. So, which was
Wow.
she
That's
wanted to be
really lovely.
well, Nicole, shout out to Miss Nicole. Miss Nicole wanted to be the change
Yeah.
because the dance world is
But when
yes,
that happened before or in the middle of the eating?
right in the process of everything.
Okay.
It kind of
So,
that
even though you got that positive reinforcement, it didn't stop you from going over the edge.
yeah, definitely
Why do
not.
you think that was?
Um, Undealt with trauma from growing up, just all surfacing itself, right?
Yeah.
And when I finally found an amazing therapist, we worked through these things. I was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this is what's going on. And then the summer before my freshman year of college, I was so excited to go to school in New York. And it was like, here's the deal. If your vitals are not consistent, if you don't gain this amount of weight, you're staying home. You're not
Yeah.
in college. But I had such a massive turnaround with this group of supportive women,
Mm.
all women on my team, right? And then was living with my dad, who was absolutely incredible at that time too, and supporting me. One of the best summers of my life. It was transformative, and I was really putting to practice the things we were working on in therapy. So then when I went to college, I still danced. I minored in it, right? It was a double minor with
Yeah.
dance and Spanish. And from a career standpoint, this is to answer your question, very long-winded answer. I didn't want it to be a career because I always wanted to be something that brought me joy.
I hear so many people say that, I always get careful when I use examples. So somebody in my life, amazing artist, amazing, but never wanted it to be their career because they thought it would take the joy out of it. And that always makes me so sad because it is the way that life turns something beautiful into something not so beautiful.
And yeah, absolutely. Especially with dance, it's such a short-lived career because it's so hard on your body.
That is the other thing. Anybody that does something sports or active in nature where it's putting so much pressure on your body, right? I always think about the last dance, if you will, right? The last throw of the football, the last layup, right? And
Yeah,
how, because it becomes such a part of your identity, how crushing that can be.
totally.
And I wanna back up to something you said. So this summer, this transformative summer,
Yeah,
excuse me,
sure.
your father was involved. So that makes me think 2 things. 1, I wanna know if maybe even though it felt like this healthy lifestyle growing up with your mother, if there might have been some disorderedness in that. And then
Totally.
the second thing I wanna know is your dad has now gone through his own healing journey to get sober. And so he has more perspective to be able to support you because he's been through a journey with that.
Absolutely. And,
Okay.
at that point, he had been in the teens years, sponsoring folks and doing his kind of own sort of counsel through what he knows and his experience, right? And then leading up to that, the relationship with my mom did get pretty tumultuous in my teenage years.
Sure.
And that's had to do with her lack of healing from what happened with my dad, right?
Sure.
So it's just like
Sure.
trauma, trauma, trauma,
Mhm.
trauma. So then part of one of my therapist's recommendations was to cut communication with my mom.
Yeah.
So I didn't talk to her for almost 6 months,
Yeah.
and that needed to happen,
Yeah.
and then had that amazing summer, went to college. For the first semester of my freshman year, my dad drove up to Manhattanville College once a week to take me to the grocery store and to take me and my friends out to dinner.
Wow.
I know, to make sure I was good, and, that's why I majored in psychology, because I was so blown away by my own experience.
Yeah.
It was like, even if I could offer a fraction of what Maureen Travis offered me, you know what
Yep.
I mean? I could save a
Yep.
life.
It's why I do what I do. It's so much of your experience is very similar to mine, but I wanna stop here because, you know, this podcast, this space, the things that I'm trying to create are to allow women to tell their stories and to provide space for that and conversation around it, right? And yay, feminism, all those kind of things. Sure, great. I've had some guests come on who said, "The thing is, I don't wanna bash men," which I've never that's not my goal either, right? I can laugh at the jokes about how we view men now and stuff like this. But the reason I want to stop here is because this is why men are important to the lives of women
Mhm.
and to the feminist movement. The support that your father gave you to say, I see the work you're doing, I support it, and I want to be part of it. I also left home very early.
Mm.
And unbeknownst, I believe at the time, I believe she now knows, to my mother, my stepfather would sneak me things. He would sneak me groceries. He would give me 20 bucks to go to the movie. He would show up and take me to a movie or things like that, where it was like these little check-ins.
Mm.
And that was it was so important. And It I cannot say enough good things about my stepfather, right? Now, he's not perfect, nobody is, right? I still didn't have a traditional father-daughter relationship anywhere,
Wow.
but he was always there if I wanted it,
Mm.
and he did it in these ways, which it sounds like your father did, that weren't intrusive.
Right.
They weren't telling me what to do, they weren't forcing an ideal on me or anything like that, but it was like, "Hey, I don't know how to be here for you, here's what I can do."
Right.
And I think that's important because I think sometimes men are taught to come in and solve the problems of women
Mm.
or take over because women don't know what they're doing or whatever that is, right?
Absolutely.
And when they show up in support of making you self-sufficient as a human,
Yeah.
that's the magic.
I think, my dad was like, "This is so out of my scope. I'm not even
Yes.
try,"
Yeah.
right? Well, what could he do? He'd make breakfast. No,
Yes.
mealtime is hard, so he would put on Stevie Wonder. He would put on
Yeah.
Sade. Like, he's a big music guy. He loves
Yes.
music. He put a record on to
Yes.
make it calming, like, he wasn't like, "You need to eat this. You're gonna die,"
Exactly.
right? And he did a great job of that. I just needed a calm,
Uh,
no chaos, and he figured
he
out.
saw,
Yeah,
right? Like, that's what I think it is I think some people and by the way, very well-meaning
right.
people want to come in and fix you
Yeah.
or help you. But
Yeah.
sometimes what you need is a safe space to be
Yeah.
and people that see what works and what doesn't work, right? It's
Yes.
that gentle nudge of what that is, and that is both in our female relationships and our male relationships. But I
Literally.
just think it was important to draw attention to that male female father daughter dynamic there,
Yeah.
because so many dads don't know how to relate to their daughters, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't have real conversations, or we don't have, there's nothing real there. It's like you see all these things online where it's like, "How's your day?" "Fine." And that's the quality time that
Right.
you're spending, right? Especially as we get older. It's a little bit different now with fathers and daughters when they're young. But it's allowing yourself to be in a space where you're curious about what's happening with your daughter,
Yeah.
your loved one, your sister, your whatever that is, right? To
Right.
be curious in that space and show up in some way, whatever that way is. I think that is so beautiful,
Me too.
and I'm so happy that you had that
Me
as part of
too.
your journey.
Because there was a big chunk of time that he wasn't around,
Of course.
especially for my older sister. So they have a different experience and a
Of
different
course.
relationship with my dad, right? But I think he also learned from that too. Like, I need to show
Yeah.
up for her. I will also say during that time period, I had an amazing partner.
Yeah.
He was super supportive through the
Yeah.
whole experience too,
That's nice.
And that,
Mm.
we just talked a couple days ago, and this was in 2007,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
It's funny too because you said, "My sisters have a different relationship." I was watching something, I think it was Elie Wiesel, but it could have been someone else, where someone was saying, "We had the same parents, but we turned out different."
oh
And he
god,
said, "Nobody has the same parents." And this
true.
really sat with me. I'm
Oh,
so much
yes.
older than my siblings, your siblings, 8 and 6 years older than you, right?
Mhm.
We get the I got the parents that were young, that were still figuring out who they were, right? And this is why through healing, you don't actually place blame on any of that. You have more of this understanding of that, right? But the parents that I had are very, very different than the parents that my younger siblings had.
Yeah,
And there is a dynamic in that that also shows up as we age, even as those relationships mend, heal, change, transform, build, right? And
right.
unless you've done the healing yourself, you cannot make space for that. You just can't, right? Um, okay, so we're in college now. We've got psychology, we've got dance kind of in the background. We're doing all of this healing. What year did you graduate college?
2011.
Okay. And what did you think? You move the tassel, I don't know which side is which side, but you move the tassel over, you throw the hat in the air. What did you think you were gonna do on Monday?
Figure out what schools to apply to get a master's in social work. That's what I thought I was gonna do.
Okay.
That was my plan. I was in a relationship, a very healthy relationship at the time. And I was like, I'm gonna go back to Connecticut. We lived in New Haven, Connecticut. Have you
Yeah.
ever been there?
Uh-uh.
It's probably, if you go to Connecticut, just go there. It's the
Yeah.
coolest city in Connecticut.
I love it.
We went to New Haven, which is a very close train ride to New York City, just kind of figure it out. But I interned at a mental hospital and then soon realized, okay, don't want to be a social worker. No, no, thank you. Honestly, bless. I cannot say enough about the people who work in that sector. Holy moly,
Yeah.
you're so important. You're amazing. I can't detach from that. I am too emo. It is too, I cannot let it go.
Yeah.
So I decided that wasn't for me. And then I was kind of like, oh shit, what am I gonna do?
Yes, yes.
Well, I know I love to dance. So let me go on Indeed.com and see if I can find anything of dance. And then I got a job teaching dance part-time at a high school in New Haven, Common Ground High School, tiny little
Yeah.
school. And they had an environmental based curriculum. So it was taking kids with extreme behavior problems,
Yeah.
cues, teaching them how to grow food. We had gardens,
That's
pigs,
awesome.
chickens. It was so cool. And
And
then
it's social work in its own
totally, Totally. So I
Yeah.
figured out how to make it work without having to go back to school for it and do it my own way, right? All within the, ethical means what my scope. So then was there, and then that turned into being a tutor. That turned into being organizing the talent show. That turned into being a creative writing assistant in helping kids write their senior, essays, all these things. So then I was like, should I be a teacher? I don't, maybe I'm going to be a teacher. I love kids. I love working with kids. I always kids and old people are my jam. And then I was like,
Me too.
I love that. And then I, was kind of like, do I want to do that? But then things in the relationship were kind of off. I was going to New York a lot. I was like, I think I need to go to New York City. Something is calling me there just to go and have that experience. I don't want to get married in my early 20s. He was ready for that. He was a little bit older. So I left a very stable, very amicable breakup
Yeah.
relationship, an amazing job, and was like, I got to go do this thing in New York City and see what happens.
Love that.
My best friend at the time was working out at a gym in the financial district of Manhattan. I worked out with her a week prior, and I was like, let me take you through a little workout. And she goes to the gym. She's working with her trainer. She's like, oh God, I'm so sore. My friend and I worked out. And the manager was chatting with them, was like, who's your friend? She showed him a picture of me, and then she's like, "This is Allie." That's what all my friends call me. She's like, "This is Allie." She's like, she's super fit. She dances. She does this. She's like super fun. She's looking for a job. He's like, "Well, we're hiring. Tell her to come in." I'm like, I don't have any experience as a trainer. I've danced, but like when it comes to lifting weights, things like that, I always just did that in classes, recreationally, with my mom at the gym.
So does that mean that through the eating disorder, working out wasn't an issue?
I got really into my own personal journey training. Then I started lifting weights
Okay.
in
Okay.
college. Yeah. And
Because
getting
I wonder if you get this opportunity, does it scare you that you might backtrack?
honestly, I was so like moved in the right direction at that time. Not
Okay.
at all. I was more excited to like, oh, I could work with other women and teach them how to be strong. Right. That
Right.
sort of thing was already happening in my
Okay.
brain. Yeah. I had my resume. I was like in my little outfit, like, all like suit, like ready to, have this interview. Right. I'm 24. I gave him the resume. He does it. He just closes it after our conversation. He was like, you are going to crush this.
Oh,
And hired me, and he became my first real mentor in
I
fitness,
love
and I
that.
used the things that we talked about and that he said to this day, and that was 11 years ago. So, hired as a personal trainer at just CPR as my foundation, right? Quickly started studying, he paid for my first certification because I was so broke.
Yeah.
Paid for my first cert, got my cert, started training with the other trainers, picking everyone's brain. Within 6 months, I was the assistant manager of the club.
Would you consider yourself type A?
I don't know. It depends on how much I care about the thing. Like if I
You
was
still go to therapy?
yes.
Okay. Ask your therapist next time.
So I will give you a little background. If I brought this computer in the bedroom right now, you'd be like, "Oh my God, my clothes are in piles. Things are
Okay.
not the way, right?" But my business is doing better than it ever has. My clients, their programs are all up to date. I'm thriving. Like, it's kind of in
So
like
here's why I say this.
why
So I've always been a cluttery mess. Always. I like stuff. Like when I take the personality test, they're like, "You're a collector." Like I'm very sentimental. Like I have every card anybody's ever given me, every letter anybody's ever given me. For a very long time, I saved a lifesaver from my first boyfriend who put it in a ring box, and then the ring box was really disgusting. Like I think I kept it for 20 years. Like,
gosh.
yeah, I'm not a hoarder,
No.
but I'm very whatever. I also always felt like I was lazy. Like my brain is like this, but I always felt like my actions maybe not so much. And in the course of therapy, she was like, "Well, you're a perfectionist." And I did what you did. I was like, "No, if you saw my room right now, there are piles of laundry in there and da da da." And she goes, "Well, that's what a perfectionist would say. Because it's never good enough. Like all the things you're doing, like your business is thriving, you're doing better than ever, and yet you're worried about the laundry on the chair. Does that even matter? Right?" And
Right.
I was like, I still wasn't convinced, right? I'm like, whatever, what does she know? And then she's like, and you're very concerned with productivity and you're very type A and you do like to organize, even though it gets organized, whatever. And so now I'm coming home with these epiphanies like, am I not who I thought I was? Like, what? And so I start talking to like family and friends. I'm like, get a load of this. Let me tell you what my therapist said. And I'm telling them, and they're all like this. Yeah. You didn't know this? And I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me all these years? I just thought I was definitely type B and I was lit. And I don't even know what type B means. I just always thought things, in order to be type A or in order to be perfect, things had to look a certain way,
Mm.
color coded and blah, 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 which I love all of that crap. I just can never maintain it.
Yeah,
And
no.
it really changed how I looked at myself
Oh,
because, and then people started saying, no, you're one of the most productive people I know. And I'm like, gosh, how lazy are other people? Like, right? But
right.
like you, it is when I'm interested in something, whew, oh boy,
It's over.
it's all consuming.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I definitely relate to that. The amount of time I probably hear at least 3 times a day, I cannot believe how much you get done in a day.
Yes. And my friends say that to me. And this is a recent phenomenon. And I'm like, okay, but you're married and you have children. And, right now I'm not at a 9 to 5 traditional work environment. Right. And I said, so I'm able to do all of those things.
Mhm.
And they're like, no, 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 even so, right? They're like, what you do in an hour. Because that was my other thing is like, I used to be a very much a workaholic.
Mm,
I worked 12 to 18 hours a day, depending on the portion of my career and where I was at. I worked on weekends. I traveled all the time, but it never felt like it was enough. I was on call all the time. I was available.
right.
I have now healed a little bit and learned how to set some boundaries on that.
Mhm.
And what has been miraculous is what I get done in 4 hours is more than I'm learning other people get done in 12 or 8 or whatever it is, right? Like,
Yeah,
I can zone in, I can figure it out, get it done, and then I'm like, "Do am I just supposed to make up stuff for the next 4 hours?" Like,
yeah,
how do I navigate that a little bit, which is interesting.
yeah.
Um, and so I'd be curious where that lands for you.
I
I'm not a psychiatrist, so, like,
No, that's definitely something to think about. I think when we go there, it's kinda like my need for chaos. Even though I want so badly to not have to live in it, I almost create more of it for myself because I'm so used to that's how I live, right? And
that's me. It's a comfort level to have clutter around me.
yes, to just
It's
be like,
like, okay, I need to make sure I always have a pen, I always have glasses, I always have a hair tie, I always have chapstick, I always have Kleenex, I always have multiple drinks around. Like,
"Huh?"
I want to be around the creature comforts that
Mm,
make me feel safe,
yeah,
and clutter can provide that. But then I go into the kitchen and the onion salt is not where the onion salt is supposed to be, or I go in my closet and the blue shoe is next to the pink shoe. No, 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 no. This cannot happen. This like drives me up a freaking wall, right?
yeah,
And so it's a weird dichotomy that kind of meets in the middle, which I
yeah,
think happens for a lot of people who heal from trauma
yes.
because some of those old habits and comforts stay while you have new methods for managing your life and what you do that's healthier.
One of the new things I am trying to do is have one day where I just celebrate my wins. One day where I just like I think it's gonna be Saturday. Take not go on social media
Yeah.
4 hours, not feel the need to post. Just take a day to
Yeah.
be as present as
Yeah.
possible because I do still always am like, "What's next? What
Yeah,
else?"
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like, because I love what I do so much,
Yeah.
it's like that also feels it. Who can I change? Whose life can I change? Who
Yeah.
can
How can I make an impact today? I'm not
Yes,
doing enough.
yes, exactly. So it's like now I'm trying to just find a one day, one
Are you a music person?
I just picked up DJing as a hobby.
Okay. So I swear I want to do an episode about this, but here is something. So the last 5 years is the slowest and busiest time of my life. right? Because I haven't worked in a traditional setting, and COVID, I had all this time for the first time in my life to sit. And I came across this revelation the other day
Mm,
that I am one of the very few people I know personally that does not work in the field of music, play an instrument, whatever, that I actually listen to music for the sole purpose of listening to music. Most people listen to music while they're driving to work, while they're working out, while they're on a walk, while they're cleaning the house, while they're have people over. But I literally sit on my front patio and say, "Okay, what is my mood right now? Okay, I'm a little blue. Okay, I'm gonna turn on a Blue Week Beats mix that I made, or who makes me feel better than that? Oh, I love Amos Lee. I'm gonna start at album 1, and I'm gonna go through his canon of music and listen to it straight through, and that's all I'm doing. It is a purely a listening session. I call it the bungalow fire sessions because I sit in front of a fire pit, but I don't have any other
amazing.
goal.
Yeah.
And that's my Saturday. That's my celebrating the win, right? Is if it's an hour, if it's some during COVID, sometimes it was 8 hours straight of that. Like I would put on headphones and I would listen to Questlove DJ for 4 to 6 hours and every night and
Wow.
just sit and look at the stars. And he would explain the musicianship and all of these things. And I would just be so engaged in it.
It's awesome.
And I say that because I just feel like we don't give ourselves space to just be or to do one thing at one time,
Totally.
right? And there is a peace and a healing in that.
I love music so much, actually, and I love electronic dance music
I
so
love it.
much. So every time, actually, your previous guest, Gina, and I are doing this together. So it's a
Um,
time for us to spend together because she's also off bossing all day
Yep,
long, and the one thing I said to a client earlier, I said last Saturday, when I practiced and went to DJ school, that's what we call it, for a few hours, all I thought about was that one thing.
yes,
And so even though
yes,
it's kind of stimulating, it's
yes,
upbeat stuff, whatever, which I also think I gravitate towards,
yeah,
it was meditative
yeah,
in that it calmed my mind
yep,
from the constant buzz and the
yep,
need to do this and to do that and what the next I was so focused on
yeah,
just the one thing.
yeah. It's a beautiful thing. I also I when my sister moved out of the house for the first time, I I drove her across country. She moved from California to Washington, DC, and I drove her across country, and I helped her, like, get the sheets and the stuff for the kitchen. She never lived on her own, right? Like, and when it was time for me to leave, oh, I'm crushed. Why are you across the country? But when it's time for her to for me to leave, we're going to the airport or for her to drop me off. And I said, "I'll be right back. I need the key. I forgot something." And I went inside and I left her a box with a bottle of wine and a letter. And in the box was all of the things to help you live alone.
Hmm.
Because I think this is very important for women. This is just my personal big time soapbox.
I agree.
And so there were about 30 letters in there, and each letter was for the first time the smoke detector goes off in the middle of the night. And the letter was like, "Here's what you do." But it was also like funny. It was like, "You're going to push the reset button and you're going to climb down and you're going to get back in bed. And 3 minutes later, it's going to go off again." And you knew it would, but okay. Like it was light as well. It was like how to do laundry, how to plunge a toilet, right? And then there were things to go with it. There were batteries, a flashlight, but I put in a pair of underwear, super random. And one of the letters was your first Friday night alone. And the goal of it was to have a Friday night dance party
Mm.
where you're in your underwear. Hopefully, there's a mirror in the room. To me, this is very important to this concept. But, and you just dance 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, where no one's looking. It doesn't matter what you look like. You're not in high heels. You don't have makeup on. And you can see how beautiful you are and what your body does for you and what you look like in the throes of joy and the moment. And I still do this, not every Friday night. I wish that I did, but for about a decade, that was every Friday night of my life. Some longer than others, what some was getting ready or whatever. And there is this again, this is all I'm focused on right now.
Right.
And it's healing without somebody having to tell me why I need to heal, how I need to heal, what it looks like.
You're
And
just shaking it out.
exactly. And I'm not a dancer. I didn't grow up doing that or whatever. But I think as we start to kind of wind down, that's the concept of taking up space, being
Mhm.
unapologetic for who you are, how it presents, right? But also having an awareness of the ability to consistently learn, explore, and refine. Because I don't want to say get better, because that seems counterintuitive.
Mm.
But like, it's like a shark, right? If they stop swimming, they die. If we stop learning and exploring how we can be authentic and truly who we were put on earth to be, we die. Depression, eating disorders, other mental illnesses, anxiety, right? And so when you use this concept of taking up space, obviously it has a physical connotation, right? That health is about more than size. But as you define it, what does taking up space really mean for you?
I think it's interesting to know the amount of folks that I've worked with who, yes, I'm encouraging them to take up their space in terms of like strength training because I'm a strength coach and in the gym. How many of those folks I've also encouraged to ask for a raise,
Mhm.
quit,
Mm.
leave a relationship, establish a boundary, all
Yeah.
of these things that we just kind of put up with to consider stop putting up with certain things and make a switch, pivot,
Do
not
you think
necessarily
it's about permission?
partially.
Okay.
I think so. I think so. Um, it's interesting for me to see the amount of folks that have a difficult time having those conversations with people, es-
Mm.
especially women, about
Well, there's a certain amount of vulnerability
absolutely.
that
And I
it takes to do that, and even though women are considered vulnerable, I don't know how realistic that really is, because we go to a certain point and stop for fear of XYZ, whatever, right?
right, of course. And I think this is where everyone's personal experiences come into play. I know as a business owner, as a person who, has to constantly kind of be on, I need to approach these difficult conversations,
Mhm.
talking about money and sales and that sort of thing. Right. And then I kind of flip into that, well, girl, scared money don't make money. You know what I mean? Hustling. But like,
Yeah,
that's me. Right. So I try to deliver that in a feasible way for these folks that might have challenges that like I don't or I've gotten over, and how like to then take up more space. Maybe that's telling your spouse you need a bath at night, right? You just
yeah,
need a break. You need that activity. You need to go listen to Questlove for an hour,
yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
might be. You know what I mean? So that is how my definition, right? It's multifaceted. There's a lot
yeah.
going on here, but what I have seen as people become physically stronger, it then starts to become a little bit easier to have those conversations, which
It
is
builds their
so
confidence,
cool. Yeah.
because it's also like, I did Bikram for a long time. And one of the things I liked about Bikram was that it was the same 26 movements every single time,
Mm,
which meant, and you're in front of a mirror. So if I'm doing the exact same movements every single day for 30 days, I can actually see the muscle changing and see my strength grow in that exact same move every day. And so even if I haven't lost 20 pounds or gained 20 pounds, or I can't flex and show a muscle, that's just never been my jam, I can see my body working for me. And so I get that immediate um, proof that what I'm doing, there's a cause and effect to it,
that
right?
we call that progressive overload. Doing
Yes.
the same sort of movements over a period of time, right? And either being able to hold the pose longer or
Yes.
like whatever it might be, right? Feel more stable doing it, right? Those are forms that that's a way that we measure progress.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with the way that you look.
Well, and it's
Really.
it's an instant gratification, but different than the one we go in expecting to have, right? Like people work out for 6 weeks and they don't lose weight, so they give up. But I feel like if you're in front of a mirror and you're seeing your body physically get stronger, are you looking for the right things, right? Like it's not necessarily going to mean that my belly shrinks quickly. It's going to happen over time, but if I can see, oh, I got 3 more seconds today, right? Like that's not nothing.
No, that's a win.
Yeah.
We have to celebrate the small ones. This is
Yeah,
why
yeah,
whenever
yeah.
I check in with my clients, it's like, "Okay, give me some wins for the week."
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
'Cause that's super if we don't recognize those, the big one is not even that cool.
Well, and when I travel and speak to women, so when I started doing it, I worked for Oakley and we were talking about the economy of women and the value of women in the marketplace and how important that is. But a lot of the conversation came into motivations. Okay. Like what motivates a woman to shop is different than what motivates a man to shop, all of these things. So I would use this example where remember back in the day, you had those, I can't remember what brand it was for, but they had that song, "I Wanna Be Like Mike."
Yeah.
Like Mike, I can be like Mike. And I would joke, I go, "This went gangbusters," because men were like, "I can't be like Mike if I put these shoes on and I drink Gatorade and all of these things," right? Women see Serena on a court and they're like, "She is such a badass. Look at her thighs and her biceps." Now, my thighs and biceps are that big, but for a very different reason, right? And I don't think if I go and wear that outfit, I'm going to be her. And so it's this mentality around what is the what is the pressure we put on self? Because I would be in women would laugh, right? They were like, "Oh yeah, that's not." And then they would tell me these things they did. I walk 3 miles a day. I'm like, "That's amazing." They're like, "No, Jill over there, Jill runs 3 miles every day."
Constantly comparing, you know?
Exactly. And it was
Uh,
like, "But you used to not even be able to walk for 3 minutes. Look at the progress you've made." And we have been what is the word? I don't know if the word's trained or conditioned, whatever that word is, to believe that no matter what our wins are, they aren't good enough.
mhm.
And so I love this concept of taking up space because taking up space isn't about winning or losing. It's about authentically showing up as who you are in whatever format that looks like. And so if someone gives you permission to do that in the gym and in the kitchen, imagine all the other places to your point. I can ask for a raise now. I can do this. And that's really beautiful work because we as women are taught to shrink and to be quiet and to not take up space because audaciousness is not typically seen as a positive trait when it comes from women.
I I think living in a place outside of New York City has been very transformative for me and learning even more about this,
Yeah.
how it the audacity some folks think that I have.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
like, I just might be talking and people think either I'm mad
Yeah.
or, I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm just vocalizing what I
Yeah.
need.
Like how many times are you told to calm down?
Oh,
Yeah. That could be an episode in and of itself.
oh Lord, no. Yeah, I mean, totally, right? It's a very interesting thing, to have audacity when when you're capable of communicating directly, you
I
know?
love what a beautiful quote to sort of end on, actually. Um, okay. I feel like this could be I didn't even get into some questions I had about defining some of what you do and all of that kind of stuff. But typically at this time and place, people stop listening to the podcast because they've gotten to work and back and they're like, dude, how long are you going to talk? So maybe we'll have you on again or to continue the conversation because I think it's so fascinating. Well, okay. Before you tell people where to find you, and we'll put it in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. Great, great, great. I always like to let the guest leave on their note. So, like, what do you wish people knew about what we've been talking about? What do you wish what do you wish for the women that are listening to here? What do you think is important for them to get from this conversation or whatever else? I know, really putting the ear to the fire.
There's so many things I want people to know. Um, when it comes to, again, what I do specifically, right? Women are not small men.
Ooh,
And that comes from my favorite, Dr. Stacy Sims. If you want to go look up some research around exercise, primarily with, she specializes in exercise research using women because lots of the research done, it's male participants. So a lot of the things that even some coaches suggest being, thinking, I've done the research. You got to take a look at the studies. Who was the research done on?
yeah.
We could do a whole thing about women and hormonal fluctuations, what that means for your journey emotionally, physically, right? So we are so different. We are not small men. So if I encourage anybody to take anything from this is to learn how to optimize your physiology, right? Your personal experience. I'm 5'1", come in with a 7-foot attitude.
Okay, we're just dropping gems now at the end of the episode, huh? You guys, you gotta listen all the way through.
I'm trying to think of things I can cover everything I want to say in like really great sound bites.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm really putting you on the spot because we're live. So if you don't answer the way I like, I can just cut it out. It's
Okay.
totally fine. Wait,
Sure.
first tell people where to find you.
You can find me. I'm a very avid Instagrammer. So that's where a lot of folks and I chat. You can find me. It's my name is Alyson.Spungin.fitness. That's where you can find me there. And then my website, if you want to inquire, see some testimonials, see some of the folks that I work with. It's baddysquadlife.com.
I love it. Okay, here is my proposition. I would like you to come back,
Woo!
and I would like it to be women are not small men. That would be the topic I would like it to be. And let's talk about these things, the hormonal things, the changes, the things that are unique to us that the research shows, and really talk about that from a health perspective.
I just gave a webinar to a group of trainers. So I develop trainers as well. And the topic was peri and postmenopausal women.
I mean, this is a hot button topic. I'm very into it right now. I'm reading, I'm learning, I'm in the thick of it.
Literally obsessed because I've been working with these folks for such a long time. I have a very strong, my heartstrings pull for these folks because there's a lot going on, a lot of misinformation. And I'm a big debunker.
Okay.
So
I love it.
yes, I'm
Are
here
you
for I
game?
would love to do absolutely.
Okay, everybody heard that. It's
Come
on
on
the
once a week
record.
if you wanted me to.
Okay, I love this. I love it so much. Thank you so much because I really like how open you were to the conversation and we kind of went all sorts of different places, but I think that it really lent itself to a genuine conversation. And I'm inspired by it, and I hope that the listeners will be too. So, everybody, thank you for listening to Wait, Hold Up, What? And by the way, if you have not subscribed yet, I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but the more people that subscribe, the more people that get to listen. So, it's a very small kindness you can do for us to help us out. Plus, look at all this great content and guests that we're having. Like, who wouldn't want to subscribe? So, Wait, Hold Up, What? Spotify, Apple, all the places that you go. Our website is Eliminate Girl Hate. We will see you on the next episode.